convene into the August 17th regular meeting of the Montgomery Economic Development Corporation. We have all members except for Bob Kerr of our board here on the Zoom meeting. Item number 2, open for public comment. Richard, do we have any public comments?
We did not receive anyone who had signed up for public comment tonight. And I don't see, I didn't see anyone who indicated that joined in from the general public.
Okay, I was gonna say the only one not on staff or the board is the mayor, Sarah Countryman, present at the meeting. Okay, item number 3, approval of minutes of regular meeting held on July 20th, 2020. Does anyone have any comments, thoughts, updates, changes? Applause, fast approval?
Well, I personally enjoy the fact that Amy does them and then I don't have to. So I'm always happy that Amy does a wonderful job, and I'm sure it's better than I could ever do.
Oh, thank you.
It definitely is better than you could ever do, Richard.
Yeah, well, as long as everyone believes that, then nobody will ask me to do it.
There you go.
This board has become substantially more independent over the last several years, both as the secretary position, I think, and the financial position than it has in the past. And I think that's a good thing for itself as an independent body.
Agreed.
So having said that, would someone like to make a motion on the minutes?
Move to approve the the minutes from the previous meeting.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on July 20th, 2020. The motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? Having none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of the regular meeting held on July 20th, 2020, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on July 20th, 2020. Item number 4, approval of financial reports. Julie.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I haven't seen y'all in a while.
Hey, Julie.
Yes, we have. So if you take a look at the account balances through July 31st, we have $97,242.87 in our checking account. And then between the two text pool accounts, we have a total of $1,341,489.13. And on the bottom of that first page, Anthony is doing a great job, and I love it. He goes on and lets us know how much sales tax we're going to be able to see on our August report, because he already has that transferred over. He gets that within the first couple of weeks of the month, so he always tries to include that on this report now. So if you look at that note, it says that there's a sales tax transfer of the $93,754.78. We received it, and he has already transferred that into our bank account. That will show on the next report. Of course, that $93,000 is not reflected in the checking account balance up above, because that balance is as of July 31st, but that amount is actually already in the checking account. If we go on to, I did some number crunching on the financial reports, and Richard, let me know if you got something different, or if you did these same calculations. But I pulled my reports from a year ago, and I wanted to compare what did July, especially in light of this COVID situation, what did July of 19 look like compared to July of 20, as far as sales tax receipts go for the MEDC. And the month of July this year was 22% higher in collections than the month of July of last year. And year to date, meaning fiscal year to date, not calendar year to date, but year to date through the month of July was 20% over where we were at this point last year through July 31st. But since Anthony went on and gave us August numbers, I went on and went through and did August numbers and compared to last year of August. And that's where we're starting to see a little bit of a hit maybe. August of this year, sales tax was down 6% compared to August of last year. And year to date, fiscal year to date, is still up about 15% when compared to last year. So those are some figures for you. You know, I think and Richard, you can, and Becky and Tom, with being on city council, y'all can probably let us know too if this is consistent with what the city is seeing as well. But you know, we're still through August, we still are showing a 15% sales tax increase when compared through August of last year.
Yeah, Julie, I can tell you, and while I don't have my notes in front of me, that I'd say what you're saying is generally consistent with what I recall when I was last looking at that last week.
Okay.
I can say that, you know, the August 2019 month collection, which was also a quarterly collection, was, you know, it was, other than the months that may have been misreported by the comptroller's office, it was easily the highest single payment the city had received in at least going back for 10 years that I looked, and I highly doubt going farther back was going to yield a higher number just due to the amount of economic impact the city has now. And so even being, you know, around a 5-6% reduction, you know, I believe, you know, the August of this year was still, I think it was still the second highest quarterly collection month that we've had in recent years. So, you know, it's still a very strong month, but it is something obviously, you know,
Gotcha.
paying attention to. So, you know, I'm really, you know, I was really looking forward to having those numbers come out and seeing good numbers. Likewise, now I'm watching forward to September coming out. So it's right now it's always, you know, month to month and just keeping our eyes open and keeping our eyes on it. So I continue to be more encouraged going forward than I may have been, you know, what, 5-6 months ago. It's almost hard to believe, you know, the kind of the current cloud over the economic situation has been that long.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
And so much of it is dependent on consumer behavior, which is very difficult to anticipate. And, you know, July's collection number would have been May's actual number. So we were essentially stuck at home in April, feeling really relieved and a little bit wealthy in May because we had our COVID relief payments from the federal government. So people had a little bit more money and were free to spend. You know, and July is kind of normaling out. August number is a little bit more of a normaling out and a little bit more of a return of fear. So, I mean, again, we're kind of bouncing all over the place. And, you know, going forward, we've got the removal of the larger unemployment check numbers and that sort of thing. So, I mean, it's still going to be really difficult for us to anticipate exactly what's going to happen. And then screwing it all up is year on year anyway is the HEB payment, which was, I believe, September, wasn't that, Richard?
It was, yeah.
It was, but I think the accounting was corrected for that and extrapolated out and set out as a
was it?
I think the accounting for that was, I think we pulled that out.
Yeah.
Because we knew it wasn't supposed to be ours.
Yes, the numbers that you see have been corrected for that.
Yeah.
When I look back at, I just put up on, you know, my screen that I have here, you know, the raw numbers, and yes, the raw numbers that came out of the comptrollers showed September 2019 at, you know, $599,991, of which I believe that was 396,000, give or take a bit, that was from HEB. So, you know, which then resulted in a $0, you know, payment from the comptroller in March 2020 and practically zero in April, but all of those have been smoothed out for the financials so that what you see is the way it would have been had it gone through properly.
Right. I almost feel like it's one of those tunas that, you know, you see them catching, they're kind of doing this all over the place, like, you know, and it's really, you're trying to figure out which way it's swimming and you have no idea where it's going to go next. So it's, again, you know, I think we can, when we get to the budget, we'll talk about it, but you know, what we determined for our top line was being the most prudent given the situation, the lack of visibility.
Yeah. Unless somebody had something else on that, I was just going to move on to the cash flow report. We had 4 expenditures that went out of the checking account. 3 were for website training and marketing, and then 1 was what you guys had approved for that additional dumpster with the blight removal.
Right.
Let's see what if we look at the actual to budget performance. Our sales tax, we collected $57,982.13. We had a little bit of interest income, and then we had we booked and paid that removal of blight with the dumpster, and then a little bit of social media, and that's all we had for the month of July. Richard, did you have? There is one thing that I don't know if you've had time to look into it, and maybe it can just be something for future, but those home grants that MEDC has paid for that we're carrying as a receivable due back to us from the city. Is there a status on those? 3 are from last fiscal year and 3 are from this fiscal year.
Right. I'm waiting on to get an answer back. I've emailed off and I don't have that.
Okay.
I'll certainly follow up with you next month, and I'll try to follow up with you before then.
Okay.
What I recall on that is when those are completed, that is due back, from the granting agency at that time.
Okay.
But I'm relying on an older memory for that, and I don't want that to be the definitive answer until I confirm that.
Okay. And it's not that we need the cash. I just want to stay on it so that I don't forget about it.
Right. And I have an update from the during my report on the status of those homes. And so instead of doing that during the financial report, but I'll comment on that as well.
Okay. Thanks. That's it. Do you guys have any questions on July?
No.
All right. Well, if there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the financial report.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve the financial reports as presented. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further questions or discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the financial reports as discussed say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will approve the financial reports as presented. Item number 5, consideration and possible action to approve RFQ on downtown development planning. Richard?
Okay. Well, we didn't quite have this about completed early enough in the month, and it was coming up to this meeting. So instead of trying to circulate it at the end of last week and rush input, wanted to send it out to you and have it here on the agenda for your authorization for us to go ahead and publish. So that's been attached here. I do want to draw attention at the top of page 3, is the timeline that we have on here and is updated. Pending the decision from this board, we intend to have it out for issue, August 21st, so just a couple days. Plan to publish notification, as required for 2 weeks, the 21st and the 28th. Have a submittal deadline of September 21st that gives us time to make contact if there's, groups out there that for places where we have seen something that we want to put on their radar. It also lets us know in front of the next MEDC meeting. We can reply or let the board know here, what we've received back. And then we have enough time that there can be a recommendation made going forward at the October meeting in terms of a final firms that we can that essentially authorize going forward on that. It's important to note that this isn't meant to be the outline of all the details of what they do. What the goal here is to bring, for those companies to bring their qualifications to us to show what they can do, what they have done in the past, what they can do for the city. When a final firm is selected, there will be additional discussion, relative to what the city wants before they come back and design it up and bring that back. And during that time, during the time between when we're putting this out, we can make contact with those firms. Also, when we have the final firm, they can see the work that was previously done by the Sea Grant students and begin to utilize that. And with that final firm, that'll be the opportunity we have to indicate the things that this board has identified that it would specifically like to see more of or less of. And so, are there any questions or comments relative?
So we were just talking before.
Yes, for the contractors, Richard.
Go ahead, Ernest.
Richard, as far as the contractors, what would be the vetting process and potential scope of work that we gonna ask them to do?
Well, with professional services, it's a little different than straight up bidding. So that's why this is set up the way it is. So this is considered an RFQ. We put out a request for qualifications. What's replied back with is called a statement of qualifications from the firms that are responding.
Okay.
And so it's essentially them providing their professional qualifications to do the work. It can and should include, say a portfolio of some of their past work, references, the staff they have on hand to do the type of work that we need. And then that is what'll happen is then we are able to take those, evaluate them, invite some or all, at the choosing on our end to be interviewed. Essentially they'll be ranked and then a final recommendation made to this board, to select a final one. And then, the actual final agreement is negotiated at that point. So, did that answer your question, Arnett?
Yeah. Also, whatever firm you talk to, they would have to be done projects sort of like that as well.
Yeah, we would definitely be looking into what their past work has been, and if it's locations that are relatively close to us, probably consider even going to look at some of that in person as well as in photograph and making contact with those entities. For instance, if one was a firm that had done work in in a nearby city, say College Station, Navasota, Huntsville, just anything like that. At a minimum, we would make verbal contact with the authorities there, but we might consider actually going out to look at ones that's pretty easy for us to do that.
And they will be secured by a performance bond and a bid bond?
Well, that's always up to the negotiations at the time. But obviously, if they don't want to adhere to what the city would require. But keeping in mind, this is also, what we're talking about here is for design purposes, not for actual, they won't be doing the actual construction.
Sure. Okay.
So Richard, before we had a quorum and had to stop the discussion, one of the things that we were talking about was pictures of before and after. I think might be an important part of a request. I don't know if we put it into the RFQ or ask it during, after you've narrowed it down a little bit, but I think it's important to not only have somebody that has beautiful ideas, but they need to have ideas that suit the communities that they're presenting them for and are implementable, if that's the word. I think, and even if it's a multi-step process, and that's something that we've talked about in terms of needing to be able to take parts of the design and move it to, you know, start in one area and be able to radiate outwards. And so, you know, their plans aren't, you know, only going to work if you've got $1 billion. You know, if you have a few $1 million and some grants, you can get the core done, and then they have a process that they know works as a step to improve or add here and there. That'd be nice. Or if they only work with rich clients, that, you know, and they, you know, that sort of thing. I'd like to know that their process works for the type of city that you think we are.
I think some of that can be identified, in the interview process. Some of it can be identified in, in our evaluation and references. But also, we can make, we could make some edits with the approval of the board to this, and a list that that would be one of the desires that would like to be seen in their statement is, like you said, before and after photos of some of that work that they've done
right.
previously.
Because it's easy to get drawn in by a beautiful picture, but reality of what, their clients go on to implement is a really important part of what we're looking for.
Well, we should require them to do a rendering of the area that they're doing, a model.
Well, they eventually will if we choose them, but they're not doing the design. At this point, they're not doing the design itself for the city. They're just telling, it's like a beauty pageant where everyone's still wearing their clothes. They're talking about what schools they went to, what projects they've done, that kind of thing. And so they're not spending all their time specifically modeling the city of Montgomery. So we won't necessarily get their ideas overlaid on top of Montgomery. So it's important to know that at least their ideas work for the cities that they've done them for, not just that they planned it for that city. They got the job, they did the work. I want to know they got the job, they did the work, and then the city took their work and implemented it.
Are we at the mercy of whoever applies or submits RFQs, or are we able to actively, for lack of a better term, recruit different firms to submit RFQs? How does that work? And I know I'm ignorant in this as far as city government goes for the process.
Well, I mean, there's certainly no shame in being ignorant of it, because if it hasn't come before you, how would you know?
I don't.
I mean, that's where you get the experience of dealing with it. So it's really a very good question. To some degree, the answer to your question is yes, but that's in a limited way. Because we should make our decision based on what comes through. There is no obligation to accept any of them, and we are free to contact firms that we think may be good to put this in front of them, whether it be by email, telephone. Send them. Essentially send them the RFQ document that we're putting out. With an invitation to come. Submit for it, and that's not unusual to do, because I mean, we'll be putting this in the paper. We'll probably be putting it on the Texas Municipal League site. We don't necessarily know that everyone will be looking at the right time at those places. They do have people who look for such things, but for companies where we know there's a history that they've done such work, especially such work that seem to have either been a good quality or popular or appropriate for those areas, we definitely would want to cast the widest possible net and get this in front of them, to get something back from them if they have an interest in doing it. It'd be far better from my point of view, to get 20 of these back than 2. In either case, you might still decide upon the same firm, but generally speaking, the more you get back, the better you feel that you're making a choice from the broader field.
And so are we able to communicate with, I think I remember in that Texas Target community presentation, was it the city of Dayton? It was something in Southeast Texas that they had won an award on, and they had implemented, I don't remember if Liberty, Dayton, something in that area. And are we able to find different cities who have followed through with Texas Target Communities or the Sea Grant, and who did they use? And Who are some of these firms that they've used before?
I mean, that is something we've discussed in the office, which should be, that we certainly would feel free to reach out to firms to make sure they're aware of this. And if they have an interest in submitting, make sure they're aware of it and encourage them to submit.
Okay.
And the city and the EDC and, Montgomery itself will benefit by having, a larger number of firms for us to choose from.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
My only hesitation would be to go with somebody who couldn't be bothered to go down the SOQ path. I mean, it's not that hard to put a cover letter on top of an old presentation or whatever. So if they can't, if they don't want to do the effort to do that, then I'm not interested. But I don't see anything wrong with pursuing people who have, designs that we've liked.
Right.
To ask them to participate.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't hound them and go, we called you 5 times and, when is your submission coming? But enough to put it on their radar, make sure they're aware of it and invite them. And then they have to show the motivation from that point to get the job done.
Sure.
Exactly.
Thank
Did
you.
everyone have a chance to look through the draft RFQ? Okay.
And specifically, perhaps, page 7 where the project scope is to get to some of the base details there. But and admittedly, some of it is general boilerplate because it meets it's structurally similar to others that have been out there, from other locations requesting it, and there's certain items that need to be included, legally.
Right. I was going to say most of it's not very interesting. It's really the scope section that highlights what it is we've been asking for.
Right.
So hopefully some of the stuff that Dave has gathered that narrowed down the Texas A&M students projects and the design ideas that we really liked will be eventually, but I guess this isn't really part of that because again, it's after we choose based on qualifications that they get to design work.
Right, and in some ways, as Dave started, because he did the primary work on this, as he started to include more of that, he had to back up and make sure he wasn't getting too far down that road, or this easily would have ballooned into a document 3 or 4 times the length, including things that wasn't necessary for those firms at this point.
Right.
There is the opportunity before they submit for those firms to ask questions. If their questions, are significant enough, we can issue an addendum and put that out to, in publication along with a modified posting, or contact firms that have expressed an interest just to let them know, others have asked this and we want to supply them additional information.
Right. Plus, there's publicly available videos and meeting minutes that deal with this too. So if they're really curious, they could have somebody watch it and queue up the time, and they could find out for themselves what it is we're actually looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, then. Does anyone have any other questions for Richard on this item? If not, does someone want to make a motion regarding approving the RFQ on downtown development planning?
I'll make a motion to approve the draft RFQ for publication.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the draft RFQ on downtown development planning for publication. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any other discussions or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the draft RFQ on downtown development planning for publication say aye.
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 Aye. Those
Aye.
opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we approve the the draft RFQ on downtown development planning for publication. Item number 6, consideration and possible action to approve purchase of radios for use by city personnel during festival events. Richard.
Thank you. This item was discussed last month, and I was tasked to research some of the items and to take those questions back and provide the answers here after a discussion with City of Montgomery Police Chief Anthony Solomon. To summarize through them, the warranty period for the radios are 2 years. They include the price. The quote you've seen includes 3 years additional coverage. If we want to remove that, it's a $25 deduction per radio. The type of battery used, is an Imprez lithium-ion 2100 milliamp per hour with single unit desktop charger. So they're charged by a single unit charger that they each have, and it's basically a standard radio or standard battery for that type of radio. These radios do need to have a separate repeater unit from the equipment that's already in the police department, and that is included in the price quote, but it does need to be separate for its frequency. The delivery timeline after order is 2 to 4 weeks after the order is placed, and they will not waive the trip charge for the delivery, but that charge does include, that is meant to cover their travel cost of their personnel who do come out and set up and test the radios and the repeater on site. And then as a side note, just as a reminder to the EDC again, this is an expenditure of $10,000 or more, so it must also be approved by City Council. The price of this was $614.65.
So just to be obnoxiously clear, we will have a warranty a total of 5 years.
Unless we take off the additional coverage, the answer to your question is yes.
Well, for $25 each, that's not that much.
Yeah.
I would agree with you based on, for that price for equipment of that expense, it's pretty much a no-brainer to include that.
Now, is this a workability or performance warranty? Not if we lose one, it's replaced?
I don't know all the specifics of it, but from what I recall from the previous discussion, that it was a replacement warranty.
Either if it's not, then I would guess that our property insurance from the city would cover it.
That is also what I would expect, and on that, because that does cover, does cover items beyond, other than where they're covered by another warranty.
Should we go forward with this, what is the first festival you anticipate using these?
I think, I think the next festival we have on the books right now that I think has a likelihood of coming that's an outside festival is going to be in March, which is Charlie Diggs, the Montgomery Mudbugs and Music Festival. We do also, from a in-city perspective, have the Light Up Montgomery Christmas at the park. That's the first Saturday in December. And then there's the Christmas parade that is the weekend after that. I do think, unless there starts to be another significant increase in front of those of coronavirus cases, that I think those are more likely to go on than not go on. And so I think that's probably the next time these would be used for an internal item.
Have we considered just renting for one or two festivals to see how they work and logistically see if it works out, or have we considered that, or we just want to go ahead and buy them?
Well, we do know from some of the previous events we need some form of communication that we can link the volunteers and some of the non-police staff together. That has been a problem in the past, and we did not have them for that time.
Is this coming out of the events budget line item?
Yeah, that was what was previously discussed is because some of those, that event money that was not used in the past, and because these, if purchased, would be used during festival events, that was the money identified previously to be used for this.
Dan, you seem to be the most knowledgeable about the radios and that sort of thing. Did you feel that this is a pretty good choice for us and good value?
The value seems to be there with the repeater and everything. These are expensive radios. My only concern would be is just if you got radios scattered, is the chain of command and who has them. What we have to make sure we get this back. The question on the warranty was, you never know. I mean, drop it in a puddle of mud or something out there, and you know, it's an expensive radio. That's a lot of money to spend, but if you guys feel it's for safety and to keep everything together, I mean, it's we obviously have it in the budget.
I mean, I think that that's something that the new police chief has really changed in terms of events, is the focus on organization and safety concerns. You know, for little things like designated driving issues during the wine festival to lost child areas for family festivals and things like that. I mean, it's definitely, there's much more of a need for communication between various groups within the festivals and events and the police department. And I definitely noticed that during the Christmas parade, you know, I think we had 3 different completely separate groups working together with the police department, and you know, you relied on cell phones that, you know, weren't really working, and you had no way to contact the police department unless you happened to be able to talk to somebody who knew who you were, and that didn't always happen. And there were definitely, I wouldn't call it a breach necessarily, but security issues that could have been solved, you know, with a better line of communication. You know, nothing happened, as it turns out, for that one in any of the departments. That went very, or issues that, you know, we identified, it went very smoothly. But, you know, I could see where you have something happen and you have a way to immediately communicate, and at the end of fixing it, you say, gosh, you know, that was $50,000 of bad publicity I just avoided, or something like that. And, you know, it's amazing how nice it is, you know, and you get used to having your cell phone and always being able to get to somebody, and how frustrating it is, but your cell phone doesn't work all of a sudden. And I think the radios would really be useful in that case. But, you know, whether it's for us to purchase is really a group decision.
Mm-hmm. Did Chief Solomon weigh in? Did he feel like this was a good, I mean, from a safety standpoint, from his perspective?
Yes, in fact, this particular radio was the one identified by him for this use. And, okay. and just a reference from one of the previous questions that I think I didn't circle back to, you know, it's like, I'm not going to say these radios can't break if they're dropped, but they're designed with some durability in them. I looked it up on a website, and I mean, they look like they're pretty significantly durable units. Obviously, if your intent is on breaking them, then that's probably, you know, going to be accomplishable. But I would say from the appearance, you know, a casual drop here or there is not what is going to take out this unit.
And they're water resistant if it's raining. I mean, not waterproof, but water resistant. Yep,
they were, it was IPC 67 and water, I can look that up real quick because we have the internet.
If it's just drizzling or.
But, let's see.
Richard, did we talk about leasing those versus buying them?
We did not talk previously about leasing them versus buying them. And so
that might be a better idea when it comes to replacing them.
to answer the previous question, you know, IPC 67 is prevents immersion for up to 1 meter in depth. So it wouldn't be something I would use, say, for swimming, but as long as you didn't drop it into a pool, you know, then it should be good.
Okay.
As far as leasing, that's certainly an option that we could look at if the board wanted us to. I think in the long run, doing that multiple times, you might ultimately save money on radios. You're going to spend a lot more time on city staff, you know, and that staff time of going back and forth and taking them in and out, that has value too. That would need to be considered.
And I would imagine as well, if they're not heavily used, they should last quite a while. Whereas with leasing, I would think that the expectation is you use them a lot. And so they have a higher turnover on owning them. I mean, I assume it's just like a car where you get the best value by owning something until you use it up.
Well, your basic repeater system or the foundation of this thing, the transmitters are still going to have, it's not something you can come out and just set on top of a car. It's going to have to be mounted on a tower somewhere, can reach the whole city. Those things will be permanent. So even when renting, you're still going to have some expense, startup expense to get this thing going.
Yeah. And the repeater system is almost 25% of the cost. So,
right. Yes.
So that would either need to be incurred, or I'm not sure. I suppose, you know, if you could find a way to rent that, but it would probably be someone providing it, you know, mobile source. So you're probably going to pay a significant amount for that as well.
Right. Leasing is essentially somebody loaning you money one way or the other. And I don't think that we're in a situation where that's our issue, especially not with interest rates at 0.8%. We don't need to be borrowing money from somebody.
Okay.
So to go back to Dan's earlier question, Richard, the radios would be kept at the police station and stored there, but would you be in charge of distributing them and controlling who has access to them?
That'd be kept at a secure location that, you know, that the police department have access to. They would be, you know, in my mind, you know, these are going to be the EDC's radios, and, you know, it's like, and so they won't be used without essentially my office's permission or the EDC's direction. And you know, from that point, you know, it's like I could envision that there might be some sort of a police emergency where I might authorize them for different use, but as I'm running something through my head, I can't think of what that is. But what we'd be getting them for, you know, is consider about public safety and setup and operation related to festivals and festival type events. And that's
I just want to know who's going to be responsible for them. You, Dave, who?
That's in this particular sense, that's going to be me.
Okay.
I was going to say, if there's an audit, if Amy wants to know where they are, you're going to be the one who knows.
Well, once you find them, I want to count for everyone.
Right. And I was going to say, because having them with the PD, then it's more complicated because they aren't necessarily easily distinguishable. I mean, unless we make ours pink. And the PD has had some walk away, and they've trickled back in. As it turns out, they're easier to find than you might think, to track. But, you know, I don't want ours walking away or replacing one of theirs and not available for us. Again, I don't mind them being used for a public emergency. It would be very churlish to say, we need radios, this is a public emergency. We'd say, no, I'm sorry, festivals only. That's not what ours, you know, that's not what I envision. But at the end, they all better come back.
Yeah, and yeah, we have a variety of areas here at City Hall. We could secure them. It may be that I need to give that a little more thought as we come up with a final plan for that. But we certainly have the ability to secure them. So my office's direction has the final control, final say, final access.
And did you guys talk about at the last meeting that if these outside festival people come in, that they're going to put a deposit down for the use of them?
That
Or
would be,
didn't.
that would be the expectation. That was part of a previous discussion.
And even the possibility of a rental fee.
Yeah. Yes.
Would an outside festival be obligated to rent the radios from us, or could they find another source?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that ultimately that's up to the EDC board itself. If that's something that we want, if we wanted to, we could certainly make that part of our festival policy. That's a place where this board has guidance in establishing that either way.
I don't think it would be legal for us to hold a monopoly on it, on the radios, but if the chief required them to have a way to communicate directly with the police staff, and we, you know, the city made it a requirement, then I would think that, you know.
So Dan, here's a stupid question. If a festival has their own radios, could they dial into our frequency?
Yes, we wouldn't own this frequency. That would be my question too. If they're using their private radios or their own setup, I would have some kind of stipulation to where they have to have a channel to where our police department can at least monitor it. And that's just a safety thing.
Right.
If something's going down over there, they need to hear it.
Agree.
Well, as you know, whenever there's a festival or any other gathering, the police department always meets with the event organizers to review a safety plan, and the communication line with the police department, whether it be the police chief or somebody else he designates, that is always clearly lined up and communicated and well understood by both parties before that security plan is approved. So whether it be these radios or an alternative, that is always in place.
I mean, I almost feel like these are not radios that everyone is going to have access to. And I don't, think our plan is to make it $1 million per radio rental. It's more of a, take it seriously and value it because they're expensive. But, again, these aren't the ones that I give to the kids when they're sleeping out in the tent in the backyard. These are serious communication devices.
Well, an overarching theme with this, to me, is just safety.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, that's the value. That's what it is, the safety aspect.
Well, it also could certainly help in making any event appear more organized.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I also think that if it's a safety issue and we're going to continue to have festivals when we do get on these other side of this social distancing, this is probably something we need to do, whether it's with this fiscal year or next fiscal year. I mean, it looks like something that we should be doing and invest in.
We will get over all.
Yes.
It's time.
And if you look at the cost of the radios versus, the 5-year warranty on it, I mean, assuming that all we get is the 5 years that the warranty is on, it's just a little bit under $3,000 per year, which if you put it like that, it's not quite as excessive. I mean, it's definitely a chunk of change now, but for, investing $3,000 a year in radios and safety and communication doesn't actually sound all that aggressive.
Yeah.
And if you figure if it heads off, if because of this 1 or 2 significant emergencies are minimized or headed off, it probably, it probably more than recovers the value right there, not just in, operations cost, but in preventing whatever that issue was.
Yeah.
Right. Which of course you'll never be able to quantify or
Right.
even know about because you prevented it, but that's fine too.
Yes.
But these radios could also be used by city staff during emergency situations. If we have a hurricane coming through, or something like that, to where the city staff could communicate with each other if the phone systems are not adequate.
And that is a very good point, because while the city staff's normal communication route is through landline telephone as well as cellular telephone, during certain periods of emergency, like especially immediately following hurricanes, or could even be other events such as storm events, tornadoes, or heavy wind events, phone lines have a way of getting taken out. Cell phone towers have a way of being overwhelmed by public communication, whereas this would be a private network, and we would know that would be an option in reserve.
This is a question. Yeah, I'm sorry. The repeater, is it going to be mounted on the tower at the police department?
I know it will be mounted with the police department. I don't know the exact location.
Okay, I mean, I just know that the one at the city hall is backed up by generation, so the power goes out. So
right, and I mean all of City Hall operates on backup power, when that's necessary.
okay,
This would be here at City Hall, so it would be covered by that.
Any other comments or questions or concerns on this that you'd like Richard to address? Would anyone like to make a motion on this item?
I would like to make a motion that the EDC approve the purchase of these radios in the amount of $14,614.65.
It has been moved and seconded that the MEDC approve the purchase of radios and other associated items for a total of $14,614.65. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any other comments on this matter?
Super quickly. Was that seconded by Arnett?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't hear, so I was just checking. Sorry.
And just as part of this, we had talked before, and I believe everyone is still intending on this coming out of the events line item.
Correct.
All right, hearing no other further discussion on this item, those in favor of approving the purchase of radio for use by city personnel and others during festival events in the amount of $14,614.65, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
The motion carries with 5 yeses and 1 no. Tom Cronin is the lone no. And we will approve the purchase of radios for use in the amount of $14,614.65.
And now it goes to city council, right, though?
Yes.
Okay.
It will need to go to city council for approval. All items not specifically budgeted in excess of $10,000, or sorry, in excess of $9,999.99 need to be approved by the governing body.
Got it.
Item number 7, consideration of possible action to regarding scheduling the public hearing of the 2020-2021 budget.
Okay, this is a formality item where we're required to have a hearing before the budget is set. There's another, we had a budget workshop earlier in the month. That item is also on the agenda for discussion coming up. So, it's a staff recommendation to call the public hearing for the fiscal year 2020 to 2021 budget for 6 p.m. September 21st, 2020, which is the date of your next regular meeting. The anticipation is that the budget will be ready for approval at that meeting as well.
So just so y'all know, if we don't call it this day, then we have to have a special meeting. So I highly recommend that you guys agree with this date and time.
And if you're going to have a special meeting, you also have to have a supermajority available to have the meeting.
And September 21st is our regular meeting too, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Assuming this will be done, a public hearing by Zoom or in person, or who knows?
At this moment, I would assume it would be done by Zoom. It'll be done through the same medium as the meeting.
Well, with a lack of enthusiasm from y'all, I will take my ability and move to call a public hearing for MEDC's fiscal year 2020-2021 budget for 6 p.m. September 21st, 2020.
Second.
Yeah.
It has been moved and seconded that we schedule a public hearing regarding the fiscal year 2020-2021 MEDC budget for 6 p.m. on September 21st, 2020. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously, and we will schedule our public hearing for the fiscal 2020-2021 MEDC budget for 6 p.m. on September 21st, 2020. Item number 8, review of the draft proposed budget for fiscal year 2020-2021.
The MEDC held a budget workshop on August 7th, 2020. During the workshop, each category of revenue and expenditures was discussed. It was organized into the draft budget, which has been attached for director review and consideration. If there's any amendments or alterations needed, we could discuss that here. The draft budget will be presented to City Council for their review, comment, and approval at a future City Council meeting, and then it'll come back to the EDC for approval.
And I'm really glad that we spent the 2 hours at that meeting so we don't have to spend 2 hours extra at this meeting. Thank you, everyone who participated.
I think it was
Finally.
3 hours. It felt like 3 hours.
Oh, it had to have been. I had around.
It lasted longer than I thought, but it went into good detail in the categories, and I mean, each category was discussed line by line from
Yes.
top to bottom. So,
All right, does anyone have any questions or comments on these allocations? Richard, I think that means that you did it perfectly.
well,
Hold on, I'm still double checking.
I don't want you to get a big head though, so I'm sure there's something wrong. We just haven't found it.
Yeah.
well, you get to have it one more shot at it when it comes back from council, and you can tell me what it was. It's like, I have to certainly give a lot of credit to Anthony here, because while he was not at our meeting and we kept notes of this all the way through, yeah, he did go back. He did take what I gave him and then go back and review it. So, yeah, he, as mentioned earlier, he is pretty diligent in trying to get things right the first time.
Yes.
He's exceptionally sharp. I think his hire was a very, very good one.
Yeah, I think he does a great job.
Yeah, well, speaking of not letting it go to anyone's head, let's hope he doesn't hear some of these comments and support himself. But I am very glad, that we've been able to bring him on board, and he is happy to be with the city. So it's a good match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's one of those weird things where we're actually paying less and getting probably twice as much as we were with the outsourcing.
I think you're quite correct. There's something about, with no disrespect to the contracting company that we had doing it before intended, there's something different when it's somebody who's on staff.
Yes.
And is working here the full time, and I mean, their loyalty is here to the city through the job.
Right. Right. And Kathy, actually, her loyalty was always to the city as well, but it's just a different situation.
Yes.
Yeah, that we have, and you guys remind me from the meeting or what the right way to do this is. On the events line, we did go on and split out the Southern, is it supposed to be Southern Rum Runner, not Southern Road Runner?
There you go. It is Southern Rum Runner.
Okay, so Southern Rum Runner and Mud Bugs and Music. we had earmarked. Do we need to go on and move out of that 34,000 account, parent account? Do we need to go on and allocate out the 7,800 and the 8,000 that we had approved not to exceed, or do we leave it in the 34,000?
My thought is that we leave that there for the time being, because you're ultimately going to have a follow-up agreement to solidify that, and those numbers could change. And you can address at the end of year whether or not it's appropriate for this year, and you want to transfer money from this year into next year for funds that are left over, or if these will just come out of next year's funds at that time.
Okay. So the important thing is to just have the sub account already there, even though it's got a zero.
That was my thought, but it could certainly be done either way.
And I think, Julie, you had said that it depended on how the contract was written,
Right.
whether it would be determined by this year because we signed the contract this year, or next year because the festival would be in the fiscal year. So I don't know if you want to take a look at the contract itself to figure out what type it is.
Yeah.
Um,
Which one was that on? Was that on both of them? I thought it was just on one of them. The way
I don't remember. If we're being honest, I don't remember.
It is on both of them, because we did vote to approve not to exceed both of those numbers in this fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I don't understand the accounting distinction that you gave, so I think it'd be best if you looked at the contracts to determine what the magic wording is and whether each of them has it.
Okay.
Yeah, and Julie, those documents should be available to you from the previous agenda items, but if you need me to pull them and send it to you separately, just let me know.
Okay.
I don't know if the Southern Rum Runners final would have been an agenda item, just because you and Rob took so long on it.
Yeah, the EDC ultimately did approve a final document.
Yeah, that's true. You're
Rob
right.
never returned it, so technically we don't have, while the EDC has an approval in place, we don't have a signed document back from Rob because of the movement of the event. So, which maybe clears it up like mud, but
yeah, totally.
Okay.
Okay, is everyone good with the review of the draft of proposed budget for fiscal year 2020-2021? All right then, Richard, I'm gonna go on to item number 10, since we're already talking about money and whatnot before we zone out. I mean, listen avidly to your reports. So if that's all right with everyone else, we're going to jump to item number 10, consideration and possible action to amend current fiscal year budget to fund contest to name the Montgomery goat.
Well, you relegated my report to insignificance and boredom now, so I will try not to take personal offense to that. And I was hoping to try to somehow link the social media item over to this one, so that ruins that transition. But aside from that, this one I agree is far more interesting. So.
Well, would you like me to reverse it and move us back to item number 9?
Well, I've already moved it on my computer, so I'm happy to continue.
Okay.
I mean, the Montgomery goat's debut on social media became one of our most popular widespread media posts that the city has seen. And we're trying to move to capitalize on the appeal of the goat. You know, in doing so, we have the opportunity to right now to develop a contest to engage the public, you know, an opportunity to name the goat that, by our best research and understanding, never really had a formal name, and use this as a city mascot, help with social media distribution, awareness of the city, help educate the public on one of the unique stories of the city's past. We found there were a number of people who, while they might have lived in Montgomery for some time, they weren't even entirely aware of that as an actual historical story from the city's past. And so it's an opportunity to actually use an actual historical event, you know, in an icon going forward, you know, that helps, lock that in with the city's history and heritage as being the birthplace of the Texas flag. And in doing so, as a method of publicizing the city and including the public in this, it's an opportunity for us also to work with the local school district at the same time that links in the social media, the city's history, in a way that doesn't come along very often, but also promote the cooperative and collaborative effect of working with the school district that, hasn't always necessarily, we haven't had the way to do that in the past. And so, my attached sheet there is, it had some estimated funding needs for being able to do this, estimated with a total of, for prize money, $220 to $250, having a first prize of $100, second prize of $50, third prize of $25, and some potentials for honorable mention prizes of $10 to $15. I would expect we could partner with local businesses on those prizes to get at least partial funding, but not being able to count on that 100%. I put that in here as part of our budget, and then I'm very hopeful that we could be able to lower that. For materials cost, the primary material here is going to be paper in terms of being able to produce the documentation that'll be the entries, primarily for elementary students in the way I see it. But we need to have the cooperation and buy-in from MISD. I've had a basic conversation with the superintendent, who is definitely open to the idea, agreeable to cooperating with the city. I did not deliver him with all the ideas. I wanted to make sure this is something, that we could move forward on before I wanted to loop him in into too much of the conversation. And, but involve this as, as an opportunity to work with those students and be able to push this item, forward, which, the naming of the goat is something that I see is going to generate a lot of interest, a lot of activity. It's going to probably generate a lot of duplicate names, so we'll have to have some administration for being able to judge those, which I'll get down. Advertising cost I have listed at $100. Strictly on that for social media promotion, we found that the money we put into boosting Facebook posts definitely has the effect of increasing the circulation and the audience that sees those. In addition to reaching through the school, with the students that we're reaching that way, that's our primary effort to try to get these back. But, increasing the awareness on the social media end will magnify the audience that sees what's going on. The professional services end of this is something that will need to be contracted out, and I see that as $125 for 5 hours worth of work at $25 an hour. That is where the website content being developed, the Facebook posting and promotion, the school handout production, the setting the rules and the schedule, setting the judging team and standards, coordinate display of winning submissions, of distribution and prizes, and that work is done in coordination, with me here at the city. Now, the one thing on this that I need to be very specific on and mention, we did discuss, at the previous meeting that, a lot of our website work was being done on a volunteer basis, by one member of this board, and that's the board president. And this would be additional work above and beyond that. The board president is the one I see doing this work, but this is additional work beyond that, what has been agreed to be done on a volunteer basis. And I think it should be, compensated properly. I think this is actually less than we would find on an outside source. And in my discussion, the board president here was willing to do it. I've had a discussion with our city attorney to be clear that this is a legal way to go. And he certainly agrees that it is not just both legal, but that we would likely pay a lot more and from using anyone outside the city. But also stressed that this is something we would need to be clear about so that everyone understood where that money was going and who was doing that work. altogether, this comes to an estimated total budget of $625. Again, I believe we can get some of this work, or some, especially on the prizes, if we can get some of those chipped in by businesses that would like to team in with us. But I wanted to budget out the full amount. This would fall within the current contest line, which I believe for the current year is budgeted at $1,000, have not yet touched. So that money is available there for the budgeting purpose, but hasn't yet been specified as to what it would be used for. And so I think this is something that we can get the entire cost into the current fiscal year, work with the school district in a way that hadn't been done before, promote the city's social media icon, and generate a lot of enthusiasm on the city for that. And so I'll be happy to take any questions that the board has on this, or if there's any additional discussion, or if you've thought of some of this in a way in your review that I hadn't elaborated on here that might help improve it.
Yeah, the goat looks like a Monty. So now you're going to have to get a mascot, a real cool one to parade around at all the events with a really neat looking collar or something so my 2 cents worth. So
Texas flag coat we can stick
oh,
on.
absolutely. You got to make it cool and the kids get involved. So
On the materials, I guess that's assuming once the kids are back in school in person, you're handing out those forms. Because if we're still remote, I guess there wouldn't be a material cost. It would all be electronic on Google Classroom.
Ironically, if we're all electronic, then it is something that could be done. There's been some discussion that could be done through a Zoom format, could be done through electronic format, through whether it be email or some other download that the school district is using to distribute items. In an ironic way, the ability, school being done remotely means some of our expenses may actually be lessened. But I wanted to put this budget out with the assumption that, that the highest cost in these categories would be considered.
I love the idea of using the school district. Would it be a blank goat and they can color it and name it? To where there's an activity with it other than just writing a name?
Right. I mean, definitely it's going to be more than just a name.
Okay.
There needs to be, we want there to be a historical component. It's not just, oh, here's the goat, color the goat, write a name, turn this in.
Right.
But it's going to involve some art component, which is color the goat. Yes, if the winner, it happens to be a first grader, it's not going to look like the polished work that you'd see, say, out of a 4th or 5th grader, who probably, some of whom have more artistic talent than I do, because I can barely do a stick figure. But also, this is our opportunity. And again, if it would be done in person by video or through Zoom, there can be a historical message delivered by the city, and age appropriate, a written historical component potentially included as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the intention is to have on one side of the sheet the sort of the contest, the date, the rules, and a very brief blurb, and then on the other side just the outline of the goat,
right,
and go to town. And if somebody wants to cut out and bedazzle something else, that's fine too.
Right.
The city hall will probably be deluged by goats because I have a feeling that Susan will get her Santa letterbox, but it'll be a goat letterbox first. Goat delivery, something like that. But that's what the double side is for. So one side is just goat, the other one is the verbiage.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, if we got hundreds or 1,000 or more entries, then it's accomplished the goal of getting the historical lesson out, the interest with the students, and the two-way collaboration with the school district, because these are all things that have value. And ultimately, I see this as, there will be some sort of a public demonstration for and showing of the award winners with a public announcement, looking to involve, hopefully some well-known local names that we'd reach out to who might want to be involved with this.
Right.
Obviously, I didn't want to get too far ahead of talking outside the city if I wasn't going to get support from the board. So yes, a lot of this isn't fully fleshed out, but it's because I wanted to know the support was there before trying to start down that road too far.
Sure.
Let's get it done before the Christmas parade. We want this goat on the float.
The goat on the float.
Yeah, let's go. Let's get it.
Dan, you made it cooler already just by rhyming that.
Right.
Goat on the float.
And we're definitely not going the route that Boulder, Colorado has that's banned the coloring of the animals, because I would like to see, and actually we did see a couple of years ago, a goat that was painted Texas flag-ish. So I definitely would like to see that again. A real goat.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to have a real goat. You got to have a mascot.
Yep, the O'Neills have one that they have in the parade, and one year it was painted Texas flag with like vegetable spray.
Oh.
That works great as long as it's.
So, and I know that it's a little bit weird with me with the money, but I've worked 5 to 10 hours a week on social media for free for over a year, so that's why I'm being a mercenary for 5 more hours.
Well, we don't want to wear you out either. I mean, that's a lot of work. It really is.
That's George's job. My kids are the only ones that wear me out these days. But I understand if you have qualms about it, because this is a nonprofit and I am on the board, so it's worth discussing if you have issues, and I'd be happy to leave the room if you'd like me to do so.
No, we're just glad you're stepping up doing it.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because if you don't do it, one of us might have to.
Yeah, and it would be awesome. Mine would be the goat and the bear.
No, we are thankful for all the work you put in, and
Absolutely.
I'm very, very thankful. And I think Richard's right. If you farm this out to someone outside of the organization, you're starting from scratch, and you are going to spend a lot more.
Right, and the 5 hours is conservative. I mean, I've already put 2 in on the ideas and a presentation to the school and that sort of thing. I mean, I'm definitely not overestimating the hours. So, but again, it's certainly up to you guys. And like I said, I'm willing to step out so you can discuss it freely.
I'm fine with it as long as Richard cleared it with the attorney and that there's no issues as far as that goes.
Yeah, and I did have that discussion. One of the things the city attorney shared with me was his wife does some social media work on the side, as a small business of her own, and and that's where his observation was that $25 an hour is some for the amount at 5 hours. He said we're almost certainly going to spend far less with this than we would if we have to seek anyone else out, and we would have an education curve that that person will be paying for.
Becky, will you be submitting an RFQ or a SOQ?
I can try.
I'm just kidding.
My resume's in the mail.
I'm teasing you. Well, I like this idea. I think it's super cute.
Do we need a motion?
Yes, I would need a motion.
I so move as it's written.
Okay, for the estimated total budget of $625 for the program. Thank you.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we amend the current fiscal year budget to fund the contest to name the Montgomery Goat for the budget of $625. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Is there any further discussion on the item?
Should it be not to exceed 625? since there's a little bit of estimate in there,
That would be good to make sure it's.
would that be
not-
the right verbiage on that?
Yeah, it would be best for that motion to be not to exceed 625. Are you okay with that being your motion
Yes,
there?
motion to exceed 625, correct.
And Amy, are you okay with that being your second? Okay. All those in favor of amending the current fiscal year budget to fund the contest to name the Montgomery goat in an amount not to exceed $625, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
And I'm obviously abstaining. The motion passes 4 to 1 to 1. And the current fiscal year budget to fund the contest to name the Montgomery goat in an amount not to exceed $625. All right, item number 9. Richard, sorry about, dogging your.
The most important part of this whole meeting. I've been waiting for this, Richard.
I would rave about how much I enjoy writing this report, but really it just is, most of it is updates month to month. And Dave McCorkadale does more of it than I do. And I'm very happy to certainly have his help with planning and development here at the city. I will try mostly to hit the high points on this, but if there's something that I leave off, by all means, feel free to ask about it. Commercial and residential development, has moved ahead, for each of those. We've had 40 homes, in 2020. 6, were completed in the month of July. 6 new permits were issued by the city in July. We pretty much have been on par with almost 6 new homes a month on average throughout the year. In July just continued that. With regards to the GLO, working under that grant, engineer for doing that work has identified the most likely elements that to be used for that money. Right now, we're waiting on some clarification back from the GLO about ensuring that the funds will be usable for the purposes, and then that area will be modeled for it. And I want to see if I can grabbing the screen share real quick and put this map. Do you see the map showing the water flow and the floodplain and flood areas on the screen?
Yep.
Okay, well, coming up 149, if you see where my cursor is in the low water area, they'll be looking to address that with a with the bridge, with ultimately, with the bridge type system over there. The primary methods of addressing the water will be some clearing of the brush out of the air and plant materials out of this area to the west. And if we move up to the northwest, looking in the general area up here for, more over here, for property that's in the floodplain that we'll be able to increase detention for. So right now, that's just very basic until we get some GLO clearance, and then that area will be modeled. So I would anticipate by next month, I will have more information on that. And the engineer for that should be making a general update for City Council at the meeting a week from now. Earlier was mentioned about the home grant. 3 of the homes that are going to be built under that they're in process actually. 3 are permitted with construction having started by the contractor. 1 has been approved and the permits are pending. So it will be constructed by the same contractor. So Those 4 should be completed, let's just conservatively say right now, within the next 2 months. And so those are underway and those are happening. Right now, we're investigating whether another effort at this is doable. And so if we find out that is the case, I will be making that report back to the city. So we will go from there, but we'll be happy to report back next month as to the progress that has happened on the homes that are under construction. Construction has begun at the Moons over Montgomery, which is going to be just immediately north of downtown, adjacent to Jim's Hardware, which is basically a tiny home style, hotel, I guess, individual rooms. So that makes it more of a motel type. But that has now been, the area's been cleared, pad sites are starting, and so that project is actually moving forward. At the Shops of Montgomery area, we're getting some more indication of the shops that are confirmed to be going there. Chipotle is one of them. Another is a retail shop, the Ruthie Grace Boutique. In addition, there will be a fitness center, a dentist, and a day spa joining those. So, those are starting to come through our permitting. And so that's in addition to the Starbucks that has already been known and the Chick-fil-A that is already operating there. And so that's what I have.
I'm so excited.
Any progress on Discount Tire? I know they were moving forward and it seems kind of dormant right now.
Yeah, Discount Tire is another, I believe it's another one that I want to say I'm not entirely sure that one. I was about to say something, but I believe it was AutoZone that I was about to give you the answer for, because with AutoZone, we received plans and those plans were returned. I think that was about a month and a half ago, so we should be getting something back pretty quick on that. But
okay, what's the location for AutoZone? And
they're going to be down 105 a little bit on the. I think they were going to be on the. I can't remember my drawings, on the south side, not far.
Aren't they right by McCoy's?
I'm sorry?
Didn't they buy the extra land from McCoy's?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay. If there's no other questions on that, you have the engineer's report. Instead of kind of recounting through all of that, he has outlined a number of the projects and locations there. We did receive the bids back for water plant 3 construction. Those will be going to City Council at the next meeting with a recommendation, and that project will start to move forward. Essentially, the capital projects fund of the city is going to be having an awful lot of work coming up in the next year between water lines, water plant improvements, and drainage improvements. But it's going to be a very busy year, but by the end of the year, a number of projects will be cleared off the books, but there will be a lot of improvements made to the city. Perhaps in my mind, chief among them is the extension of capacity. The city currently has, in its most limiting capacity, a capacity for approximately 875 to 880 connections on the water system. That, with the final approval of the water plant improvements, that will increase dramatically. And so that, is definitely an economic driver for the city, because we will have the water to supply the growth that is coming. The water line project going through will allow us to deliver an increased amount of water supply from the east to the west to the city, opening that area up for wider water capacity, which means greater fire protection for the residents and greater water available for future commercial development out that way as well. So are there any questions related to that? If there's a question regarding the engineer's report I can't answer, I can certainly inquire of the engineer and bring that answer back to you.
Are we part of the water line extension all the way out there to Tractor Supply?
Are you talking about where the city of Conroe's work is?
Oh, okay. That's what I didn't know if we were a joint type setup or what.
Right. Well, once you get out that far, that's really the city of Conroe. So that's not party to us. You know, I'm not saying there might not be room one day for a deal between the city of Conroe as a backup supply for the city, but approval of the water plant free project with that construction really will serve the city's needs for both emergency needs and immediate regular domestic needs for some time to come.
Okay, does anyone have any other questions for Richard?
All right, then, thank you.
Okay, then. The MEDC Board of Directors reserves the right to discuss any of the items listed specifically under this heading or for any items listed above in executive closed session as permitted by law, including if they meet the qualifications in section 551.071, consultation with attorney, 551.072, deliberation regarding real property, 551.073, deliberation regarding gifts, 551.074, personnel matters, 551.076, deliberation regarding security devices, and 551.087, deliberation regarding economic development negotiations of Chapter 551 of the Government Code of the State of Texas. Item number 11, discussion related to real property deliberations and economic development negotiations. It is 7:31 and we will adjourn into executive session, but hold on a second. Richard's going to tell us how to do that.
Okay. About 30 minutes ago, I sent an email out to all of your email addresses in order to properly conduct executive session, because that is done in a private setting for certain confidential information and in a not recorded environment. And this meeting is being recorded in this room. So you will disconnect and leave this meeting. Go to that email. There's a new link for you to join, and then we'll have that appropriate discussion there. And then we will leave that meeting and come back to this same room environment, to pick up the meeting from that point. After you leave here and come to the new one, Susan will be sending out the link to return back here, so you don't have to go hunt that back. So is everyone clear on that who hasn't done this before?
So Dan, just leave the meeting here, check your email, and then you will find a new link to join a new meeting.
Okay.
So it's okay to leave this meeting.
It's okay for you to leave this meeting.
Okay.
All right, we'll see you in a second.
Hey.
Hey.
Long time no see. Once we get Richard on, I see 6 of us. All right. So it is 8:09 and we will convene back into regular session. Item number 12, consideration and possible action on items from executive session if necessary.
So I move to instruct the city administrator to work with the city attorney and city council consistent with the advice given during executive session.
I second that.
It has been moved and seconded to instruct the city administrator to work with the city attorney and city council consistent with advice given in executive session. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will instruct the city administrator to work with the city attorney and city council consistent with advice given in executive session. Item number 13 is board inquiry. Do we have any items under this heading?
Well, I wanted to follow up with Arnett's question from the last meeting I think it was during the board inquiry about the actions to clean up 149. Did you guys come to any resolutions on that, or?
Well, we did, and as I was, as we were entering executive session, it occurred to me I didn't address that during my report. And as I was flipping through, there's a page missing that addressed that item. So I can give you a basic summary of it here, which is we got to outline the basics of what we were generally calling, I guess, along the lines of a community beautification, because we want not just to outline, one specific area, but place on the city staff function, to be able to, keeping that as a focus always. And while the original discussion was related to the north side of the 149 corridor, that won't only and always be the case for that one area. Mm-hmm. But what we had outlined, and I'm sorry it didn't make it. I didn't notice it over the weekend when I reviewed that. And, as I said, I saw that at the beginning of the executive session flipping through because I intended to put that face up so I could redirect towards that. Is that from both from a city code enforcement point of view, as well as a general beautification point of view, is begin the process, and we're looking at starting this process in the next week. Identifying specific properties. First, go out and make contact with people, not just so their first introduction, is a letter or something that may look, to some, may be received antagonistically. Mm-hmm. Go out, make personal contact, let them know with a simple explanation why we're there, what we're trying to do, that they will be getting a follow-up letter, and what that means. At the same time, having reached out to some community organizations such as the Lions Club, has indicated a desire to help for items in the community in the future. Some of the area churches, where if there's people who may need some help, let them. If they've expressed to us the desire to work within the community, and people are looking for assistance, that we have a place to turn them to. That we're not essentially just telling them, get this done or else, and maybe they're in a position that they're not sure how to accomplish that. And so we want to look like more a cooperative and a collaborative effort, but ultimately it's one that has, enforcement possibilities. And we don't want to look like, the arm of Big Brother who's going to come down on them. We would rather it be something that has a high opportunity for success. Mm-hmm. And so that is the way we envision it and plan to move forward with it. And we're doing that from a city staffing point of view. So we don't feel like we need specific authorization or funding for that. And again, I'm sorry that page wasn't in here. It's like I glanced around my desk thinking I may have just had it laying around, and so I'll get that in the next 2 days, scanned and forwarded out to everyone here.
Was that something that falls under the MEDC blight removal?
I think ultimately, if there's a substantial amount of work done in some areas, or if there may be need for dumpsters associated with cleanup, right? I think it can. And what we've discussed, here in the office is that if there is going to be any coordination for some other groups, maybe one, whether it be a community group or a church group, there would be a possibility for the EDC to contribute funding towards dumpsters or some element like that in the cleanup.
Right, to go to the site itself, so that they don't have, there's nothing to transport from homeowners. You can take it to them. Right.
And so, if we see that's in the direction that's likely to happen, especially on a large site basis with individual points, then I'll be back to the EDC to talk about funding those individually. So, and that was one of our thoughts when we, with the blight removal budget that was recommended from staff to the budget for the MEDC.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah, it's 15,000 a year that we have in our budget for it.
Yeah, and including what you've already spent this year, there's still, if it was this year, there's a significant amount of funds available, and that includes about $1,000 that went to one dumpster, a dumpster pickup here from City Hall that was done extra. So I think the money's there for that.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be a great start, Richard. I think the problem is when we don't address it. We just have to have a starting point somewhere, not only just for that the north side, but for all the areas that have some distressed properties in them. It's our job as a committee to enhance the city and make it more attractive for commerce. So I think you got to start somewhere. And again, we don't have to strong on people, but if we're not going to them, telling them what we can do to help to assist them, they're not going to do it. And finding some of the property owners that then abandon the property, then I think the city, as a board, we just got to do what we got to do, because if they don't respond in 30 to 90 days, we move forward.
Yeah. And this would be an opportunity where you talk about potential abandonment, maybe we do reach out to places and find out, that is an abandoned owner. That's an entirely different direction that we would have to approach. But in doing this, we would be able to identify that. And so that's the direction we'll be working towards. So we will have something to report next month for that. What state we're in. I expect at that point we would have had the initial reaching out to people and probably be around the point of notifying them in writing. We definitely want to make efforts to talk to them in person first. And I'm sure once we talk to 2 or 3 people, that word may start to spread as well. So.
Yeah, and speaking of nonprofits and my church, Fellowship Montgomery, we do have a survey where we go out and try to see what the needs in the community. And my nonprofit, we always try to address issues like that. So as a team, I think we can get some traction on this in a collaborative effort with MEDC and the churches and some nonprofits that I work with. TJ, he has a nonprofit also. So I think that it's just our just start. We can talk all day, but we just got to start. And I think we can do it in a compassionate manner where, 9 times out of 10, if they're not doing anything, they would be kind of offended anyway. So you just kind of go with it, and hope for the best.
Right. And so, if we can avoid looking like we're the heavy hand of government and smile a lot, I think we got a good chance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so.
Okay. Any other inquiry questions?
Okay, then if the board is interested in moving on to item number 14, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'm so moved.
We have a motion and a second. I think the second happened first. Thank you, Tom. The motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Hearing no comment, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we are adjourned at 8:19. Thank you very much, everyone, for your stamina.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks,
Good
guys.
night.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right.